Hey guys, it's Daniel from Jenkins Bass Fishing here, and over the weekend I just hit 300 hours on my Evinrude ETEC. This motor is a 2008, it's a 150, and at the 300 hour mark I put about 200 of those hours on it myself. I bought it when it roughly had about 100 miles on it, or 100 hours on it is my guess, but after 200 or so hours of using it, I figure I have enough experience, I've used it enough in enough bodies of water, and just to give a real review on it for you guys, and then also to give some advice for future owners who are thinking about purchasing a used boat with this engine on it, what my thoughts are, and some tips to help maintain it and make sure you get the best out of this motor. So as you guys come closer, you can see it's not perfect. I use this boat and motor all the time. It's got some scratches in it, some dings from hitting trees, and it's not perfect. This isn't some video sponsored by Evinrude. It's my true honest review of the motor, and with all those hours comes some dings and whatnot. It could use some new decals, but overall at 300 hours it's still in pretty good shape, and I like the look of it. And yeah. All right, so a little backstory on this boat and motor. I bought them used together. The previous owner had already repowered with this motor, and I bought them about three and a half years ago. And I didn't know much about boats or motors at the time. I had a limited budget, and I was able to find this deal. It wasn't posted on Craigslist, and it was from a guy that knew a guy that knew a guy. And I went down there, it ran great. I didn't know much about anything at the time, and I was like, all right, I'm buying it. I didn't look at any other boats, and so I was just kind of stuck with this. It worried me a little bit that it wasn't a Mercury, just because Mercuries are much more common, in my opinion, than Evinrudes. But I just, said, I gotta have it, and I bought it that day, and I haven't looked back. So overall, I haven't done that much maintenance on it. I replaced the spark plugs at about 150 hours or so, just to be careful, and I've replaced the lower unit oil one time as well. But I'm right there at that 300 hour mark, so I'm going to replace that lower unit oil again to be safe. I'm going to replace the water pump again very soon, probably the same time I do that, and do a little bit of maintenance stuff here in the next coming weeks. But some very basic statistics about this motor is, with my bass boat, it's a 18-foot fiberglass boat. It pushes me with a full tournament load and 2 guys in it and a full tank of gas, you're looking at anywhere between 54 to 57 miles an hour, depending on the condition. And that's a really good speed, in my opinion, fully loaded down. When you're one person, quarter tank of gas, I've seen 60 miles an hour before, and I've actually seen 62 on one of my old graphs. I now have HDS Lives, and the fastest I've seen is 60, so I don't know how accurate the 62 miles an hour is, but I've got a generic prop on here. I don't think it's a super nice prop, and I've never messed with the jack plate before. So if you're somebody who really likes to tune with your stuff and wants to put a really nice prop on it and mess with the jack plate a lot, you could probably add a couple miles per hour. But right now, I don't want to buy a new prop because I've got things to save for, like a nicer trolling motor or a new starter battery, and I'm in college, so I don't have a ton of money. So now you know some of the background of this motor and my history with it. I have some pros, some cons, and some advice for future owners. So if you're curious about owning this motor in the future, if you're looking at buying a used boat with it on it, or you're already an owner and you're looking for a few takeaways, stay tuned for that at the end of the video. So I'm going to start off with the pros. The biggest one is I've had almost no problems with this engine. The one problem I did have, I'll talk about a little bit later, but it was related to bad gas. And besides that, it has been an awesome motor to me personally. All right. When it starts up first or second crank every single time, no matter what. I mean, like dead of winter, I haven't started it up in 2 weeks. I'm going to turn it over and it's going to turn on for me. Never had an issue with that, and that's a big plus for me. Second is it's extremely quiet when you're idling or moving around and you're not gunning it. when you turn it on, it still sounds good. It sounds kind of mean, but when you're idling, you know, at the beginning of a tournament in the morning, and you're standing on your deck and you're still trying to hear exactly what's going on as they're, you know, yelling out numbers and stuff, you can hear over this engine. You don't have to scream to your partner in the next seat to you. You know, you can hear, which is a big plus for me. And another thing is it sips on gas and oil as well. So I don't think you should be making your decision of motor based solely on how much gas and oil you use. But for me, not using a ton of gas is a huge deal. And being able to get from, you know, one spot to another that's really far away in a tournament and not have to worry about if you're gonna have enough gas in your tank, you know, that's super important for me. All right, so some of the cons of this engine, for me personally, I don't know if this is for all engines, but this is for me, is when I'm in really dirty, shallow water, it idles a little bit rough, and I've noticed it runs about 10 degrees, you know, warmer. So the 10 degrees warmer thing, I mean, that could just be because the shallower water is usually warmer, and it's, you know, there's more sediment, so it's you know, straining a little bit harder to cool itself. Not really sure what the deal is, but it's never left me stranded before. And with the rough idle, it'll hiccup a little bit or sound a little bit rough when it idles, but again, when I get on the gas, it usually goes away, almost always goes away. And it's never let me stranded. It's just one of those things I've noticed. You know, for me, I like fishing deeper water. I like fishing lakes and stuff like that, so it's not a big deal. Generally, the only time I'm in shallow, dirty water is when I'm running way back up at the end of some creek or in a river or something. But again, generally, that's not usually a problem for me. So it's also really picky about its gas. I mentioned that one time I had an issue with it, and it ended up being, they thought it was bad injectors and it wouldn't get on plane, it just wasn't running properly, and then sometimes it would kick in, and there's a lot of issues with it for about a week and a half. And they thought it was that one bad injector, and what I thought it personally was, you know, bad gas, or the injector was clogged. And I ran some BG 44K through it, which is basically like a fuel cleaner, and it breaks up like little sediments and stuff like that. And once I ran that through, and I ran that whole entire tank of gas through, my problem, you know, went away, and I never experienced it again, which definitely confirmed that it was bad gas. And, you know, I'll talk about that in the advice section, but it can be picky when it comes to gas. And then the third and final thing that I've noted, it's not a deal breaker, but it is frustrating. There's obviously a lot more Mercuries out there on the market, and given that, there's a lot more Mercury certified technicians. So when you do have an issue with this and you're trying to get a certified Evinrude mechanic to work on it, or somebody who's willing to work on it, it's a lot harder than it is when you have a Mercury. And it's not a deal breaker. There's definitely still tons of people out there. For me, I don't take it to a lot of places. I like to do the work myself. So again, not a huge deal. But if you're somebody who likes to, you drop their boat off at the certified technician and get all the stuff done and then take it back and not worry about it for the whole year, that's something to consider, to make sure that you're close to one or you have access, you know, something like that. Advice for future owners would be to run it regularly. I know I didn't talk about that so far in the video, but running it regularly, I think, has helped this motor out tremendously. I've never winterized it before because the max it's ever sat is 3 months, and those 3 months were not during the winter. It was actually during the summer one time when I hurt myself and I wasn't able to use the boat. And so I think running it regularly, starting it up at least if you can't take it to the lake, that's really going to help your motor. I mean, a lot of people would say that for all motors, but if you're not doing that, I would definitely recommend it. And I think it's going to, you know, just really help it start up easier. And you don't want to let that gas, as I was just saying, it's picky with gas, you don't want to let that gas sit in there for a long time. And then the next thing is, if you are buying this used, which if you're watching this video in 2020 and it's a 2008 motor, then you're probably buying it used, try to figure out who you're buying it from, or who your previous owner, or what your previous owner used for oil. So for me, I never checked that. I really wish I did, but I didn't know enough at the time to ask those kind of questions. But since then, I've always run the exact same. You can run the regular Evinrude oil, or for me, I've run the Pennzoil Marine, you know, XLF 2-cycle, and knock on wood, this works perfectly for me. You know, you can definitely go with the Evinrude oil. That's what they recommend. That's what's safe. But for me, I started using that, and I've continued to use it this entire time, so I don't feel like switching up, and it works. You know, I'm not going to switch anything. And then finally, gas. I mentioned before, the one problem I had was gas with this motor. It is extremely picky. So don't go to a random 7-Eleven that's close to the ramp, or the mom and pop shop that's really close to the ramp that everybody else gets their gas at. You know, I'm all about supporting, you know, the local places to get your food and stuff like that. But this motor is very finicky, and I would recommend getting your gas at a gas station such as BP, Shell, Kroger. I know Kroger might not have the, you know, best gas per se, but I've gotten it there a lot, and it's very consistent in my opinion, and I've never had any problems going to Kroger and getting gas. I think my problem was I stopped out, you know, in the country somewhere that it was a gas station that had super cheap gas, and I just filled it up because I thought I was getting a deal, and it ended up either having some water in it or some gunk in it, and it just, you know, it didn't work out. So be picky about where you get your gas from, and I think that's going to save you a lot of headaches with this motor. I've been on a lot of forums, I've read a lot about that, and it seems to be one of the largest issues. And it's such a simple thing. Just, you know, go to a different gas station 3 miles away, and you're going to save yourself a ton of headache. So I hope that helped you guys. This has been an awesome motor to me. I know 300 hours isn't a ton of hours, but so far I've had no major issues, and plenty powerful, plenty fast, and it's, you know, fuel efficient, so you can't complain about that. If this video did help you, or, you know, teach you a little bit about this engine, please give it a thumbs up. And if you guys haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing little maintenance tips and tricks on this motor, my boat, and you can follow me along the journey. So thank you guys, and have a good day.